Welcome back to EuryCon 2023. Today we have a really exciting panel. We have two experts in Thai GL, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have them because I know next to nothing. I've watched like one series. I'm not an expert. So today I want to welcome both Kwannie Krairit and Tom Baudinette. Thank you both so much for coming and joining me today to talk about this. So let's start with Kwannie. Why don't you tell us, who you are and how you got into this and why you're here?
Okay. Hi, first of all, thank you very much, Erica. It's my ultimate pleasure to be here. My name is Kwannie Krairit. I am currently a lecturer at a Srinakharinwirot University, International College for Sustainability in Bangkok. I started, getting involved with the BL and GL cycle, like back in the days, many years ago, as a consumer, first and foremost. And even before that, I was a hardcore consumer of Y content, originally, from Japan. And then, when it grows in Thailand, I'm a consumer as well. I speculated first, and then it got more and more interesting for me and for people in my circles as consumer and scholars. So it brought me into the BL cycle in Thailand. I got involved as a fan. I was in a fandom, and then somehow, somewhere, I got involved as a producer, not producer, but people involved in the production side as well. So that's basically it for me for now.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. And Tom?
So I am a senior lecturer in Japanese Studies and International Studies at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. And my story is very similar to Kwannie's in that when I was growing up in Australia, I was a fan of boys love content, and I will admit that my kind of academic and personal kind of fan and scholarly interests do align more with BL. But as I was kind of consuming it in the Japanese context, doing research about gender and sexuality in Japanese media, history and contemporary society, I serendipitously discovered what was going on in Thailand around 2014, 2015, and became first and foremost a fan. And then, like many scholars who don't really know how to separate their personal life and their work life, that eventually led me to really focus on questions of fandom and production related to BL. And it was always this kind of feeling in the back of my mind when I was, talking with Kwannie, for instance, or other members of my circle, including yourself, Erica. We had debates about where was GL within this broader ecosystem, and that question has always been something interesting to me. So I have a book on Thai BL coming out, and in the conclusion to that book, I actually talked a lot about how more recently we've been seeing the emergence of GL. I particularly wrote it within the context of one series becoming very popular, a series called Gap Yuri, which I think we're going to talk a lot about.
We're probably going to talk a lot about that.
So I kind of wanted to flag as a next stage in research on Thailand's popular culture and queer media and international fandom, that GL was the next thing that was probably going to be pushing the envelope and pushing the fandom forward. So that's really what I'm here to talk about, and also to kind of gush about. I'm a big fan of Freen and Becky. And that's, I think Kwannie and I are quite into Idol Factory and so forth for various reasons.
You got me turned into Idol Factory for the same reason, and I watched a couple of the BL things just to get a feel for it, so that when Gap came out, I wasn't completely confused by the, how it worked, but I thought that was amazing. So it really blew me away. So I appreciate you getting me hooked into that. Thank you for being my pusher. So I'm going to open this question up to both of you, though. And either one of you can take it. So what do you think the social factors that are involved in the spread of BL and GL in Thailand. And this is sort of a 10,000 meter view, you know, because of course there's a lot of social factors that, like, for people who aren't really familiar with it.
I will just start first so that Tom can answer the, well, longer, because I only have like a couple of things at the top of my mind right now. The social factors, first of all, I would start from the demand, because we've been seeing that, like, the demand locally and internationally that had been growing in the past few years because of the growth of BL, right? And the consumers, the audience that kind of locally, I'm not 100% sure about international market, but locally speaking, the audience had been wanting the equal representation, like, and that had been a growing concern with BL when the side couples or female characters had been put on the sideline just for show for a couple of years, and that led to an increasing demand of, well, let's say female couples, or not even GL, like, to have a fair share of screen time and presence on, well, in the society, as well as in the, well, in the series, in the content as well, because they insist, well, as a consumer of GL subfic, like the fictions, right? Because that's where GL emerges from.
Every time, in every fandom, right? Like we see with By Her in China. You know, and it's always in the fiction, right?
Yeah. And the market was quite big, but comparing to, well, the bigger market in the printing industry and online magazine, and it was almost literally before Gap, let's say, it was bare minimum. It was less than bare minimum. So there was a growing demand from the community, the LGBTQIA plus community, the SOGI, that, well, enough is enough. Like, there should be, like, our time. The spotlight should be on us. You are reaping out of our identities, our content, but then you're giving us back, like, literally so little.
Right.
So there was time, there was growing demand, and yeah, so it was basically about the equal visibility and gender identities on screen and in Thai, well, community, Thai society as a whole. That's for me.
Okay, excellent. And Tom?
So I'll kind of take things back a little bit further to brass tacks, because I think that for some, you know, viewers of this panel discussion, there may not be a familiarity with the fact that Thailand has a rather vibrant BL and emerging GL industry, which we can trace to the 1990s. I think one thing that is very important to put onto the ground, like at the beginning, is that you'll often have a myth that circulates outside Thailand, that Thailand is somehow this LGBTQ friendly paradise, and that the emergence of these industries is reflective of some kind of mainstream pre-existing acceptance. But that's a myth. I call that a myth deliberately, because the fact of the matter is that Thailand, for the vast majority of post-war, the post-war period, or if that's the most appropriate way to call it, or the Cold War period, had a remarkably strong heteronormative society in which informal and formal media regulation was utilized to suppress representations of same-sex desiring people and gender non-conforming people, in order to bolster a kind of patriarchal heteronormative representation of the state that was often tied to particular institutions in Thailand, such as the monkhood, the monarchy, and development in general, that was always conceptualized in heterosexual representations. So the rise of both BL and GL within Thai society. First BL in the 80s and 90s as a form of fandom for Japanese products, and then GL Yuri content following not too long after. Like that was very much a bottom-up fandom kind of practice in which they were borrowing and adapting content from Japan, and then increasingly from Korea as well through K-pop idol shipping, both boy groups and girl groups. So we had that kind of fandom space emerging in the 90s and 2000s, and then eventually in the 2010s, media production companies in Thailand, through collaboration with publishers of both online and print novels, realized, oh, well, we can create a media industry out of this. And they went with BL first because it was more prominently visible within the fandom community. And then, as Kwan has mentioned, you know, as BL industry in Thailand became a significantly successful moneymaker and indeed a mainstream media phenomenon. And I think Thailand's one of the only places where I would argue that BL has mainstreamed rather than it's operating as a subcultural force.
Right.
As Kwan mentioned, then the voices began to push for broader representation, and this is part and parcel of the kind of politicization of Thai youth in the last 5 years or so, in response to the erosion of democratic freedoms within Thailand after the last coup. So this also provides some kind of what I would call socio-cultural context for why we now have a hugely successful series like Gap Yuri. And I would also flag, you know, Kwannie was talking about domestic demands from LGBTQ consumers and fan consumers for GL. That was also reflective in the broader international engagement for wanting to see more complex and more realistic and more centered. Sapphic is often the term that it was used to kind of talk about it, sapphic content, which as a scholar of BL, that was one of my great dissatisfactions, was that women in early BL texts were often positioned as villains or would frustrate the central male relationship, like it did used to in the 90s in Japan. And then we started having, you know, female friends, and then those female friends started kind of hinting towards romantic relationships, and then of course people want the real deal. And a company like Idol Factory finally recognized that, though they weren't the first technically.
Which leads us to the second question, which is, what are some of the commercial factors that really drove the spread of BL and then following in GL? Because it does seem like you were saying that part of it's coming out of the shipping of Korean pop idols, which is its own giant subculture juggernaut. And so what do you think really made Thailand commercially just the right place and the right time?
I think so. A lot of my research has been focusing on the production side of things. As much as I look at fandom, I'm also interested in the kind of production systems and how the rise of first BL and then now GL has led to the formalization of these shipping practices that we've seen in other East Asian and indeed other, you know, markets. Of course, you know, we had Slash with Star Trek and Spock and Kirk, of course, and like how this was always something that fans did in a hush-hush way. Sometimes, like in K-pop production, it was hinted towards and recognized by production companies and idols, but it was never on the table. What Thailand kind of did that was innovative, I argue, and I say through the lens of BL, and then GL companies have borrowed this pattern from Thailand's BL production and are using it to now create a similar system for GL, is that they basically said, we're going to give you couples that you can ship. Like, we're not going to make it hard for you. We're going to create this series focused on male characters falling in love and female characters falling in love, and then you have a couple. It's like and then you're going to ship them outside of the series, and we're going to provide you lots of content for you to do that. And then we're going to get those couples to start endorsing our sponsors' products. We're going to get them involved in advertising, and then it's going to create this massive ecosystem of consumption that is a benefit to us economically, and it's going to fulfill your desires for queerness and intimacy and interaction. So it's a win-win in that regard.
And Kwannie, do you have any thoughts about the commercial factors?
I believe I'll get back to this a bit later on, because I kind of think it works a bit different when it comes to GL, I mean female coupled, comparing to the BL. Like, because there are risks. Like, even though for Frin and Becky, who was we would presume the first ever GL couple to follow the footsteps of the BL couples, the many BL couples out there.
The formula that has been set by BL for shipping.
Yeah, so it was it had been a bit more tricky comparing to others, because they went past the steps of trial period. I would say that the company would tease, throw them out to the public, to the fans, to decide whether is this a green light, whether they will give this couple a green light or a red light. Right. So I think it's not for this question yet. I will get back to this for sure.
So I do want to say that was one of the interesting things. So Gap Theory was coming out as a Gap the Series live action Yuri series, and what they did was they would tease like video teasers, and they had like the happy teaser and the sad teaser and the angry teaser, right? And they were clearly watching how many people were engaging with those. And I'm sure that there was quite probably a change in the way that Frin and Becky were marketed based on which ones were going the most positive, right? Because I mean, I bet if the angry one had been the one that was like had the most watches, I bet we would have had an angrier, more contentious Frin and Becky. But the happy one, the loving one, was the one that got the most hits, and people were like, "Yes, this is what we want." And so we have this snuggly Frin and Becky instead. And that was very interesting to me, because they were very clearly using these teasers to see what the audience was interested in and what they were hoping for. So I thought that was interesting.
We could for the first GL, arguably, we could go back to around 3 years ago, actually, for the first tease, when the CEO or the manager, someone from Idol Factory, the company, would tweet on Twitter, post a tweet on Twitter asking what is the best like GL novel I should read, something like that, something along that line. And then the tweet just exploded like once. I'm like, oh, are you gonna do GL? And people are backing this up, like, the idea. And then shortly after that, I was like, oh, then the author of this series of the novel was that something, a tease, and then there would be like a series of teases and teasers and a glimpse of images, like first fitting, something like that, and that would gather so that they could get more and more feedbacks from the response, rather, at the beginning from the audience. And it was explosive, because
it was explosive, right? That really surprised me. I mean, how many people were responding, and they were like people, and from all over the world, right? People were screaming like, "Give it to us right now!" What? It was amazing that people were like, people in South America were like, "Yes, yes, 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 gimme, gimme, gimme," and it hit the right time, the right place, you know.
I think that really speaks to you know, both Kwan and I have alluded to that strong, you know, desire for that was being pent up over the years for sapphic content
Yeah.
amongst
Yeah.
international fans, especially
Mm.
after, you know, when Boys Love from Thailand exploded in 2020 during the COVID pandemic, due to suddenly everyone discovering this series from a production company called GMMTV called Together, and it just, you know, everyone kind of lumped on. And it was even at that point in time, you know, okay, we've just watched this BL series, where's the GL?
Right.
And that was quite interesting because in the Philippines, for instance, a number of production companies produced BL series in reaction to the popularity of what was going on in Thailand, and then they made a GL immediately after that. Whereas Thailand was a little bit more slow. They were doing, I wouldn't call it market research because it wasn't so formal, but they were definitely watching and waiting, because even with BL, when BL first came out in Thailand, they moved very slowly because of the long entrenched kind of like, yeah, negativity, I guess you could say, towards male romance within previous Thai media culture. What GL had to contend with was the fact that there was nothing for kind of female romance within Thai media culture, and hence, you know, it was one of the reasons why I think BL was used strategically. So for instance, we saw companies like GMMTV begin to slot in female romance side couples in a series,
right, just like hinting,
was because BL was a safe space where that could already be explored a little bit, because
particularly
they'd
the
already
stories that are set in schools. There's always that thing where it's a school thing. We can just, you know, everybody can hang on each other and we will pretend that it's not real or whatever.
I mean, let's go
it's
back
always
to
an out, you know?
Like if you think about the history of Yuri in Japan, and you know, I'm talking to the woman who wrote the book, you know, like it was the same with those eskanke exactly in the 1920s, that we were seeing, you know, love between high school girls, and like yeah, what I did appreciate about Gap Yuri is that it skipped
I agree.
that
It
and
just
went
skips
straight
that,
to the
right? It
office.
goes from like when we met, when we were real long, okay, we're adults. And actually that is, I'm seeing that a lot in some of the Baihu, which is they're either adults in the workplace, it's all high power corporate women, you know, and or this sort of imperial flowing robe, you know, period. The same thing with Danmei is, but then that's, let's face it, that's for the clothing. I mean, you do that period because the clothing is outstanding, and you can have cultivation, so you have people flying through the air and using magic in their swords. So who wouldn't want a GL story, a Yuri story set in, like, you know, everyone's beautiful and their hair is perfect, you know?
I mean, I love between magical super women, to me, is like exactly what you want to have on the screen,
right? Exactly.
So for me, the other thing that was very interesting to me, you know, to kind of go back to what Kwan was talking about with Idol Factory, how they were doing some teasing around Gap, around Freen Becky had already developed some fandom for her participation as side characters within a number of notable BL series, for instance. So she was always recognizable. Likewise, other companies like Studio Wabi Sabi is another group, and they took one of their more popular female kind of side characters and put them into not the greatest GL story I've ever seen, but they tried it. They tried it too.
They tried, right.
And so
the
it was
first ones were always sort of awkward anyway, like, you know.
I mean, and if you look at the first Boys Love from Thailand, Lovesick, which I was obsessed with when it came out, but oh, it's hard to watch now. But yeah, I think that there was a lot of testing the water, even with fan demand. I think it's also, you know, when it comes to Thailand's media industries, at the very top are very conservative, powerful men, and they need to be demonstrated that this stuff will make
a lot of money, bags of money.
So they had that proved to them through BL, and hence using the economically successful kind of space of BL to begin floating some of this, I think was a very strategic idea from behalf of people like, for example, Idol Factory and Saint Supapong, you know, who was like, I want to try and make GL.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Well
they
said.
used Gap, and it was very successful. And I think Gap was extremely successful, particularly given that it was, you know, online internationally and really had an immediate global reach. So let's talk a little bit about, now that we have AGL, we have a controversy, and that's been big fun this month. So I was away for a week and the world exploded online because Freen, one of the stars of Gap Theory, was stalked, and photos were taken with her boyfriend, if I understand correctly. And some particularly nasty folks have really been very harassing about that. So Kwannie, we were starting to get into it before we recorded, so let's give you space now to talk about your thoughts about this.
Well, I would love to say that I initially had no thought about this. I only had like feelings. First thing first, like I only had like, I felt disgusted, gutted as well, and sad, right? And it just showed again, proved again that, well, no matter how, well, for the first few hours, at least, I thought we were going somewhere with this, but then we were still at the same place where we began, huh?
Right.
But then, as time went by, and I knew that I could see a lot of angers and sadness and confusion and venting going on. And but at the end of the day, I think at least for the next few days afterwards, I also saw a very organized group of fans, like, and try to tackle this issue by themselves. Meaning, well, I'm not going to talk about the pressing charges or whatever, that stalking part, but talking about the fan engagement and fan mobilization to support and to educate other fans within the Twitter space or X, whatever. The community tried to educate each other, setting the priority straight, which is the idol, the Freen herself, right? What should be prioritized, what has changed and what has not, and what will never change about Freen.
And their relationship to her, which is really the core story here, right? Because we were talking about how fans reiterate those same arguments, like, how dare she, wait a second, it's a job, right? It's jiggery, it's business, right? And so
we were talking about that, and that came from like a lot of fans with anger, and a particular group of fans that wanted to make this the biggest issue ever. Like, she's betraying us, she should return our favors back. We have been rooting for her. We've been spending so much money on her. How dare she betrays us? But there's another, like a more calm, more literate group of fans, not too lost in their fantasies. Those who can extract their fantasies and reality, even though they themselves admit as well that, well, I still have my fantasy, but then I do understand. It kind of breaks my heart a bit, but I still understand that, well, Freen is living her life, and she is a person, and she has every right to live her life, right? Something like that.
And Thomas, I know you had some thoughts on this section.
I mean, I've been quite vocal over the last few days on my Twitter account. I refuse to refer to it by that letter.
Twitter as well.
Yeah,
it's Twitter. Abusive stepdaddy can't make us change our name.
So I think, for me, reflecting also, so just to kind of backtrack a little bit, I'm a big fan of one BL couple in Thailand called Taenu, who are one of the big name kind of early couples who maintain popularity even to this day. And we, as fans of that couple named Polka, had to go through a similar sort of experience where it turned out that New was dating someone, he had a girlfriend, and blah 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 blah. And that had a similar sort of kind of reaction. And what I think is interesting, I liked, Erica, before we started recording, you said that, you know, for a lot of fans, all of this is new because it's their first moment and they don't really know
the
how
circle,
to
right? Yeah.
Whereas for some of us who've been in this rodeo for way too long, it's just kind of like,
Many
okay,
years.
here it goes again. But what really piqued my interest was that this moment kind of led to, I think, a lot of reflection, that this is fan service. It's work. It's not real.
It's business.
And that we buy into fantasies. They sell us a fantasy, and then we support that fantasy. And that if this has upset you in a way that leads you to engage in antisocial behavior or illegal behavior, or if you feel that you've been cheated, then it's time for you to reflect on your relationship with this industry, because clearly you don't understand how it works.
Right.
And this is
it's
something
an
that I've
unrealistic
been,
relationship. Yeah.
And this is something that I've been quite kind of vocal about on social media right now, because I think that it's an important learning moment for people who have been engaging with GL. And it's still something that people who engage with BL need to learn about. Hell, think about all these people who get upset over, you know, Ariana Grande cheating on someone, right?
Right.
Like
or Japanese idols who have a boyfriend. And
exactly.
The difference is, of course, and you know this well, that the Japanese companies tend to always side with the fans. And you know, and they'll make the idols apologize, and Idol Factory is taking the position. Right.
Exactly.
Idol Factory is taking the position of their actress and saying, no, this is not okay. And I'm really glad.
And I'm quite pleased with the ways in which the Thai media industries have always tended to side with their talent.
Right.
Not always, but have tended to. Yeah, not always, but have tended to. And
actually led us to the other debate. Like I saw the other day, the big debate among fans was Idol Factory, the company, the agency, the stars, Frinbeck, were they baiting us, queer baiting us all along? And I was
it's such a frustrating response, because
it is a frustrating response. I had the same conversation with somebody on one of my spaces. They're like, well, it's the company's fault. No. I don't see how you can make that.
Yeah, the company is very upfront about what they're doing. As I've said before earlier, the huge innovation that Thailand has done is that they are expliciting, like it's explicit. This is a company we have produced for you to ship.
Yes.
It's a product that we've made for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've chosen.
That's exactly it. It's a product. This couple is a product, just like this idol group is a product. And so your fantasies are safe as long as they remain fantasy.
And as long as you have the critical reflexivity. I've been quoting one of my good colleagues who works on K-pop. Her name's Dr. Steph Choi. She works at University of Buffalo. And she has this fantastic evocative quote in this essay she wrote about K-pop idol fandom recently, that if the idol's responsibility is to sell you a fantasy, it is the fan's responsibility not to fall into delusion.
Excellent. I love it. I've been saying something just like that, not as eloquently.
And I would say that, yes, with the Frinbeck thing, it's revealed something about the GL fandom community, that they're not quite at the same stage when it comes to reflecting on these things.
It calls into question which portion of the GL fandom. So Kwannie and I were talking about how it seemed to be driven by a specific portion of fandom. Right. And I'm not going to get into
comfortable
which portion
naming
because
it, because I think we could name it.
I'm not going to name it.
I'm not going to name it.
but we all know it, right?
Yeah.
So those of you who are watching, wondering why we're being really waffly here, is because we would like to survive till tomorrow, is basically why it comes down to. But the bottom
I've
line
already
is that,
upset them, so it's too late
we
for
have
me.
so we're being a little weird about it, but the bottom line is that there's a particular portion of GL fandom, not from the West, and it's virulent at this point about being very angry about this relationship that was put in front of them as a business relationship being a business relationship. And so I think I've been talking about that with you also, Thomas, that you know, the idea that you're watching media and enjoying media, that it ever leads to a position of possession, like this feeling like I possess this is mine, this ship is mine, or this series is mine. And I understand how it gets there, but that it ever gets into real world antisocial or criminal behavior, I always I'm like, that's a you problem. Like that's not okay. And there's no one in GL global fandom going, yeah, it's perfectly fine to harass people. Like that's not a GL fandom problem. That's a this guy problem. So, but yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said for discussing queer baiting, but I don't necessarily think that positioning series that are designed specifically to be this couple to fantasize about is queer baiting.
And I think that this is important because likewise, I'm always quite upfront with my own kind of writing and reflection on this concept of queer baiting, is that it was deployed and utilized within a particular media moment in the North American context, especially,
right,
within which when we saw the expansion of rights for same-sex desiring people and gender non-conforming people, that media began to hint towards this sort of content, but then wouldn't follow through. So the whole thing about queer baiting is that it's supposed to be a media product that gives you, like, it makes it look like it's going to be queer and then it's not.
But then suddenly isn't.
Yeah. So this stuff is not queer baiting because it's right there on the table.
It's literally right there, right?
Yeah. Is it about manipulating a pink economy? Yes, perhaps.
Oh, yes.
But those are different things. Those are different
Exactly.
things.
Exactly. And it's not about personal manipulation because no one is required to watch it or required to like it or whatever. And Kwannie, do you have any thoughts about, because you had brought up the idea of queer baiting as well, do you have any thoughts about the industry and that term?
Very short one. My thought is along the line of Tom, so he has been speaking out my mind all this time. He knows what I think, so yeah, he gives the best summary of what I'm thinking as well. As a long time, why content consumer. So we learn to, let's put it this way. I've been through the heartbreak and I learned to understand it the hard way.
Yeah. I mean, we all do. There's always that one, right? that you do think about, but no, and also I'm curious too, Kwannie, have you seen the reaction of Thai fandom to this? Because as we said, the negativity has not really come from Thai fandom, although there's some, there's some pieces of it, but it's come from outside there. So do you have any thoughts about that?
I think the Thai fandom has, at least a fair amount of fans, local fans had seen this coming, and be 100% honest, I think a lot of Thai fans already know that one of the two or both of them are, has a, or used to, or still in a relationship. So so they were not that thrown off. They were thrown off by the fact that this person was being stalked.
Yeah.
And
that somebody chose to do that at all.
Stalked and blackmailed. I think we need to
blackmailed.
The blackmailing was the thing that for me.
I mean, that's the part that really makes you go boggle. Like, I worry that there are people who think that that's blackmail material. you know?
Yeah.
You know, that's something that's out in the public eye and is well known is somehow blackmailable. It's very distressing to think about that. So all right.
It is interesting also, and I wonder if Kwan, you've noticed this too, because I'm a fan of Billy, who is another Idol Factory guy, and he was in a ship with Seng Wichai that didn't necessarily do as well as it could have, perhaps. That was the main couple from Secret Crush on You, Erica, which and of course, like I haven't seen many Billy Seng fans. I mean, maybe that's because they've read the writing on the wall. Like Kwannie,
there were no longer ones.
So like, but it's been interesting to see. Like, I've been watching Billy's kind of social media right now, and he's just kind of been very upfront and very clever about like kind of just saying, you know, I've got a new couple. I'm here for you. And like leave Seng alone. So I think it's been quite interesting to see that. So and that's mostly, as I said, in Thailand and Thai fandom, because for two things: one, Billy Seng didn't really make a splash outside Thailand, and two, I think that the Thai fans are a little bit more, do I say mature? I think I will. Because they're a little bit more,
they just get it more, like they're just more comprehending the ecosystem. Like it's their own ecosystem, so maybe they just get it and don't really see the fuss. But also, you know, we can't measure any fandom by the worst person in it, you know? I mean, that's like, so this person who did this behaves so extraordinarily that we can't, and here's my position on this. We cannot call that fandom because we keep talking about this and everybody say, you know, like Comicsgate, you know, they're fans. Are they? Are they fans of anything? Is there fandom in there? Because this is my argument when we talk about the worst group or the group that is becoming the most difficult or causing the most problems. Why are we referring to them as fans at all? They are not part of the fandom. The fandom is totally 100% okay with the fact that Freen and Becky have their own lives, and they're an adorable product that we can enjoy.
And they were a ship that was like, that worked. Like they had chemistry.
They did.
They knew how to do their job.
They did.
They were extraordinarily supportive of each other.
Yes. And
like, I mean, to be quite frank, Freen was getting harassed well and truly before all of this because of a lot of delusional consumers, let's call them, rather than fans. And like, it was very interesting that Becky and Becky's fans were actually rallying behind Freen. And as I said, I've seen this already with the Tainu stuff that was going on in 2020, which is now well and truly reconciled. So, you know, Freen Beck aren't dead. At all. Like this is the thing, the threats from these antis, and I think that's what we can call them now.
I think we can call
them, they're not going to work, because
they're not going to work. And I think it's important as a longtime fan, like both of you, and probably longer than both of you. I feel very strongly that we need to stop giving them any credit as fans. When you make that leap into delusion, you're no longer a fan. It's not about the fandom. It's not about your love of the fandom. It's about a level of possession, a level of delusion. And once you make that decision to be deluded by what you thought you had, it's not about fandom anymore. And I feel really strongly that we shouldn't talk about them as fans.
Especially if your way of justifying and making sense of your entitlement is through material commoditization. I've paid X, you owe me Y.
And that was, I think, a comment you had made. Somebody had said something on Twitter about like, you know, this will never get sold again. And it's like, you can't, first of all, that person could not speak for this entire part of the world, but also it's, you know, it doesn't matter if you bought all the books, you still don't get to tell the writer what they want to do. You don't own the writer, you don't own the ship, you don't own the characters. Go ahead and write fanfic, draw fan art. That's what that's for, right? And it's fine, but I think we need to acknowledge that. And the moment you step outside that and start getting angry, it's a you problem, right? So
that you mentioned the author, that not even the author could control her content after it was being adapted. Like there was a big issue with her, with the author's content, with Gap Yuri itself as well, Gap the series, when it got, because there were problematic parts, and it was actually the fans that corrected the content. As you saw from the those many teasers that Idol Factories produced beforehand, and then the actual product, the final product that you saw afterwards, right? It was
there's a little difference.
Many like changes made. So even the author couldn't control, but it was all, again, I wouldn't say but it was because of the local fans as well. I think if I wrote it back a little bit, because I caught this part, in the past few years, as Tom previously said, past 5 or 3 years in particular, the Thai fandoms, the Thai audience, the online people, they were more sensitive, being extra sensitive about gender issues and how they would consume or distribute the entertainment news, especially when it comes to private or personal lives of the artists. So when this came out last week, the initial response would be how horrible that something happened to someone. And then, and it got carried on, and there would be different opinions on this, queer baiting, lies, and all that matters. But at the end of the day, even the mainstream media would report something like, well, Freen was being harassed and stalked, and so,
putting the blame on the person who committed the crime as opposed to putting the blame on her, which is a refreshing change.
And I think that was
sorry.
And I think sorry, Kwan, just I think one thing to kind of talk about, because Kwannie, you were talking about how there were and I want to throw back to you for this as well, about how, you know, the GL couple ships had to manage extra kind of concerns and pressures that BL ships didn't have to. And of course, this is the fact that they're women, and they're women within a society that isn't just you know, homophobic and heteronormative, it's patriarchal. And hence the backlash we've seen against Freen has been so strong because of that element as well. Because I think, once again, about the team New problem, like, you know, oh, New has a girlfriend. Who are they hating on? Not New, the girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, I think Gap did address the patriarchal world in the story. It was really like The Devil Wears Prada with social issues, right? And they actually, the fact that they actually addressed it in the TV series surprised me very much. So they actually addressed how this was seen as problematic by other women who buy into patriarchal system, as well as, you know, the men who just assume. So I think Gap was particularly vulnerable in that sense, because they actually said these things out loud.
And I think that there has been a few people who have like, as I said, from the anti-camp, who have thrown the idea that, well, this is hypocritical. No, you're hypocrites. You're not just liars who stole our money. You're also hypocrites who said XYZ and then turned around
in a TV show where they were being paid to act. You know, I'll never get that one. So we have just a few minutes left. So I want to ask you both, what do you think the future holds for Thai GL? Why don't we start with Kwannie?
I see a bright futures, or you can tell by the success of Gap, there would definitely be dozens more of GL series. Of course, at least I think, well, I count my fingers. I think I count to 10 series, GL series coming out, and at least one from Idol Factory, which is in process right now. And I'm looking forward to other at least 3 from GMM very soon, right? In terms of content as well. And well, it's growing. We're not stuck in, of course, there will be series located and situated in the in high school, and of course in university as well. I see from Star Hunter, one from Star Hunter that's located in, well, the universe of engineering faculty again. So well, there's a demand for
We'll
that.
never escape.
Of course not, never. Like there will always be a demand for that content. But then we see the growing of and diverse content of in GL, right? So we'll see Freen and Beggy's project, the passenger film project, which developed really fast, like keeping up with the BL series of films that are coming out, has come out already as well. And we have fantasy genres and period and everything. They're catching up on the, well,
yeah, I need
BL
more
content.
historical.
Yeah,
That's do I.
I need costumes. I need my costumes, you know, costumes artists.
Thai period dramas have amazing costumes.
I know.
We just need to wait.
Yeah, right.
But they have to make the production look like up to par, or else it will look really bad. Okay, so hopefully with the
Kwannie's thing is always that she's gonna go back to, like, it needs to be, the diction's good, the cinematography is good, which I agree, it's good. Like, yeah.
So I'm a local, so I get disturbed quite easily. Like if they don't pronounce things, if they don't like pronounce things clearly or like correctly, I would just, oh, this is not it. But yeah, it's better with GL series, like, because, well, they have long, they have a lot of experience now, like the producers, and all levels of production houses are involved right now, like as in they do with BL. Everybody is jumping in because they now know that it's not a short-lived like trend, but it's something that they can move forward with. Well, no pun intended. And what else? What was I thinking about? And yeah, we'll see. Well, with Idol Factory, when Gap the series was produced, it was a huge risk-taking step, right, for the industry, for the producer, well, themselves. Like Idol Factory risked almost everything they had for this, and the investors were like hesitating. It was like, oh, BL, sure, no matter how bad you do, it will gain a little something, like market value, but we're not really sure about GL. Sure, we had like GL, let me see, Yuri, well, female couple film years before, right? Yes or no, that was the biggest thing back in the days, right? And it exploded, like in, well, locally, domestically, and abroad, right? Especially in China, where it had, well, both the actors, Susha and Tina, they both have like solid amount of fans still, right? But then
I still follow Tina.
Me too. I mean, me too. Even though she got into a controversy, like not very good news before this, but they were still alive. They are still alive and doing quite okay in the entertainment industry locally, and, well, especially for she's doing well abroad as well, in China, and all. So, but then, well, still, I don't know if it has to do with Thai society being so patriarchic. It took a long time for us to get on with GL series, but now that it has started, and well, I don't think it will stop anytime soon.
Excellent, excellent. And Tom, do you have any last thoughts about that?
So I just want to pick up on this idea around money, because there's like, especially within the kind of academic queer studies circles I move through, you know, the minute capitalism's involved, it's always already evil, right? But the fact of the matter is that it was the success, the economic success, first of BL and now of a series like Gap Yuri, that demonstrates to the what in Thailand we refer to as the dinosaurs, that there is indeed a potential here. And when Freen Beck won the Kaz Award for Best Most Popular Couple, which had been dominated by BL actors, and then, you know, it was a big deal when Chris Singto of Sodas knocked off the heterosexual couples for that award in 2017. It's a huge deal that Freen Beck were able to knock off Brightwin and Nanon for that role. Like, that's a huge deal. So to any sane marketer in Thailand, it demonstrates that this stuff gets eyes and can sell. So even if there is still a need to push back against patriarchy as well as heteronormativity, you know, I think that I agree with Kwannie that the only way is up. It's not going to suddenly disappear. In fact, what I am concerned about is that it will fall into the same trap that BL has fallen into in Thailand, which is overproduction of poor quality series.
Right.
So I'm hoping that the whole Thai media industry can, rather than making a glut of content, could scale back and really focus on quality, because that's what's going to be important for the next step, which is the globalization of this content, because international fans are beginning to be fatigued by the repetitiveness and the poor quality of some Thai productions, and that means their eyes are beginning to turn elsewhere. When it comes to BL, Thailand is now in direct competition with Japan and South Korea, and Taiwan and China. So that's significant. So if you know, GL begins to pick up in other regions of the world, Thailand will fall behind. So it behooves the industry.
Showing some signs of picking up in Korea. There's a
and that's
number
exactly
of short series and some movies, and even an animated movie that came out this summer called The Summer, and it was a huge hit.
So this is really important. And also GL from Thailand has yet to crack into Japan the way that BL from Thailand has, and that's something that they're going to need to think about. I think GMMTV with their series 23.5 degrees, because GMMTV has a development deal with Asahi Television in Japan, I think that they're probably going to go hard on marketing that GL
and that
series.
one's a science fiction one, isn't it? So I think that one, is that a science fiction story? I thought
no, I think it's just a high school story, isn't it?
Okay,
Yes,
because I know there was another one that was a science fiction story, and I thought that's going to go, because right now in Japan, Yuri is very heavily leaning into science fiction, with a lot of applications.
That one takes longer than initially planned it. But again, the first one from GMM, this one that we're specifically talking about, it's been delayed for a while as well, hasn't it, Tom? Yeah. So as long I'm willing to wait as long as the production is good.
Excellent. Well, I want to, we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to thank you both very, very much for joining me today and talking about GL in Thailand. And I'm going to thank everybody who's watching this. And I would like to again say, we'll see you again at YuriCon 2023 on Yuri Studio. See you soon.